Oh, come on. We had to do a pun.
You
Oh,
did
shit.
like
I did. Yeah. What are we
6
even
in a
doing in
row.
it?
Jeez.
It is. It was six in a row. I just bam, bam, bam. There you go. And welcome everyone to another edition of the Spoiler Room. So glad you folks could come down the stairs, pull up a chair with your favorite drink. I've got a new one tonight, by the way. Nice. Hey.
What are you drinking?
Malibu Splash, pineapple and coconut. Apparently they're getting into the whatever, like Kool-Aid, the Kool-Aid, lemonade seltzer game. It's pretty tasty, actually. Malibu Splash, pineapple and coconut. They had a strawberry and coconut, but I figured I'd go traditional with the pineapple and coconut.
Is Daryl Hannah on the can?
No,
Malibu
she's
Splash?
not, but she should be.
Yeah.
She should be. So as you know, Splash, her Splash character, her and Tom Hanks, they should get them on here. But we're not here to talk about Splash. We are here to talk tonight, continuing our It's So Lifelike month, where art and murder and horror meet for this month. And yes, you heard his dulcet tones joining us tonight to talk about Torture Garden from 1967. Yeah, we set to Wayback Machine, folks. 1967 Torture Garden discussion. Man who keeps coming back for more. So glad to have him in the spoiler room, as always, Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very grateful. I didn't know anything about this movie until I agreed to watch it for this series. And then when I put it on and I saw who was in it and who was making it, I was like, did you plan this, Mark? Like on purpose? Because this is so in my wheelhouse. I was just, start to finish. I was like in love with the movie and in love with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I am glad that makes me filled with joy, because I discovered this. Our good buddy Doc got me, I think, the DVD, if I remember correctly. He told me about it because I saw the credits and I'm like, yeah, I looked at this. I'm like, wait, Jack Palance. Okay, wait, Burgess Meredith. Wait, Peter Cushing. What the like, how have I not heard of this film? It's anthology film, folks. And yeah, Mr. Ian Simmons here, being the kind man that he always is going to give us a synopsis tonight.
No, you already started. I think it's only fair that you finish.
I can.
No,
all right, I'll
do
I
it.
can, okay,
I'll do it.
I'll do it, but you do it better. So.
Well, thank you. No, so it is an anthology film, and it's essentially these four people. Turns out it's five, but
it's five. Yeah,
oddly enough, they go to essentially a carnival, and there's a house of horrors. Dr. Diablo's Torture Garden. Dr. Diablo is played by Burgess Meredith, the wonderful Penguin, or you might know him from The Twilight Zone, but probably mostly the Penguin.
The Penguin, yeah.
And he essentially gets these 4/5 because Jack Palance, as you mentioned, is in the movie. He's one of the five people, but he's such a hanger-on in the beginning that you almost feel like he's in league with Dr. Diablo. Because he's kind of hanging back in the shadows and nodding and smiling. He doesn't say anything for most of the, until his segment comes up in the movie, later on. But Dr. Diablo offers these people, he shows them around like his little wax museum. There's an electric chair and like, oh, look, isn't that exciting? And he said, now for £5 each, you can come back to this, other secret room, and I'm going to show you something that's going to blow your mind. And it's 1967, so I guess £5 was like an egregious amount for a carnival show. But the people agree to it, especially when Dr. Diablo says, look, if you're not completely thrilled, I'll give you your money back. And they're like, all right. So we meet this wax figure, I guess, who is a lady with these giant shears and some multicolored strings that represent the fate of each person that's, each of the spectators. And the deal is Dr. Diablo says, go up one at a time. She will read your future, like your doom as prescribed by the devil. And you will have a chance to either go along with it and choose to go that path, or you can choose something else. And it's kind of like a Christmas Carol in a weird way, the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Sure.
So the bones of the story are the 4 stories from the people who are in this attraction, looking into their futures and all the weird, evil things that await them. It's kind of a very Tales from the Crypt, very Twilight Zone
Mhm.
esque, but also this is Amicus Pictures, so it's not officially like Hammer, but I mean it's directed by Freddie Francis, who did a bunch of Hammer films. The reason I'm into this, Mark, if I might
Mhm.
sidetrack, is because
Go
for
ahead.
2 years I've been doing a series on Kicking the Seat called Hammerland, and now we're doing Son
Mhm.
of Hammerland, where each month we go and watch a different Hammer film with Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC. So I'm finally at the point now, because we started this as my education into Hammer films, because I knew
Sure.
nothing about it before we started. But now
Mhm.
I'm watching this like, that's Michael Ripper. Oh my God, there's Peter Cushing. Oh my God, look at the lights and the sets and the costumes. This is amazing stuff. And Torture Garden is no exception. It's got a weird title, and it's not a movie that I don't think a whole lot of people know about, but they should.
Totally agree. Well said. Like I said, I was turned on to this by our buddy Doc, who's a huge Hammer fan. He introduced me to pretty much any Hammer that I've watched. Was introduced by him. He was like, "Here, watch it," and I love the style and the feel. And when I saw who was in this, I'm like, "Okay." And then I watched it. I'm like, "This is awesome." You're right. It's not gonna be quite for everyone because it is British. I wasn't quite sure. I'm glad we have an expert on tonight because I wasn't aware of the Amicus connection, and I wasn't familiar with some of the British actors in here as much as yourself. So the Hammer connections, but I mean, I knew Cushing was the Hammer, a Hammer connection, but it is like a Hammer horror anthology film of sorts. It is a bit dry, so there are a couple stories in here that, while are very cool, some people might find just a little bit dry. One in particular involving the second story about an actress, which is interesting, yet at the same time it is handled, I would say, rather Britishly.
Do you think so? I mean, maybe it's just
I
because
think so a little bit.
I swim in those waters so much that
Mhm.
I can't tell. I mean,
I
it's
I
not.
I I think so, just because it's a little subtle. And what we're talking about, folks, and we're going to probably talk about these out of order. I do apologize. But the second story in here is an actress looks into the shears and she sees the future to where she's very ambitious. She sabotages her roommate, gets this date with this producer out in Hollywood, makes connections. That producer leaves, but she meets another one, and she gets a part in a role in a movie. But she's talking to this actor who looks like he hasn't aged, and they talk about the top 10 in Hollywood, why they don't age. They're always very successful. Well, yes, folks, this is a spoiler room. Well, eventually, as events turn out, she suspects there's something more going on, and she discovers what it is. Apparently, a doctor had discovered a method to put their consciousness into synthetic bodies. Now, again, this is 1967, and they're talking about synthetic, people, where your consciousness is transferred, and that's how they've been able to be successful for so long. And it's really interesting, but it plays out subtly. I mean, you know how it turns out now, but I will say when I first watched this, I was kind of wondering where they were going. Didn't expect the sci-fi angle.
No. And it's also, I don't know if they've done this angle before in movies. I mean,
Mhm.
I doubt this was the first, but it very well could
No,
have been.
yeah.
Dr. Heim is the
Mhm.
surgeon, and they refer to him as a refugee surgeon who has his own techniques. We're talking just over 20 years after the end of World War II.
Yes.
They don't say it, but I think we're talking Nazi doctor robots.
Says Heim, and I believe he has an accent as well. So
Yes.
when he does speak, so yes, they don't say it, but it's implied of exactly what doctor he was of with his unorthodox method.
And Bruce Benton, I think, is
Mhm.
yeah, he was the actor that
Right.
our Carla Hayes falls in love with. Um, at one point, she scratches his face,
Mhm.
and that's when it's revealed what exactly is going on. he's got a metal endoskeleton, like a T800 or something, but we don't see it. Like, there's not a big reveal of like he pulls off his full face or anything. All we get are the little glimpses beneath the finger tears in his cheek, and it looks like almost completely black. But maybe it was just the stream I was watching. I
It might be
rented
the
this from
stream.
Amazon.
It might be the stream because on the DVD, it does come out a little more silver.
Well, that's
So,
what I was going to say.
yeah,
It's dark, but as he moves around, you can see kind of like a shimmer
right.
beneath it, and it's very cool. And the effect, the torn flesh effect, reminded me of the TV series V from the early '80s, and also what Clive Barker did in Hellraiser, when Frank's skin would kind of hang off from that kind of jelly flesh. It's great, and it's so weird that you wonder what's going on throughout this entire segment. You call it British. I don't know. I would not want to meet the person who can't sit through this 20-minute segment and be interested.
Oh no, and again, I didn't mean it as an insult. I mean, the style of it, just kind of the way the story plays out, isn't exact. It is more kind of in line with I would say other British products than US. Just how the events play out. I mean, there's a lot more subtlety in this film as far as dialogue in the conversation than what you might get. I think if this was a 60s US short, there would be a lot more obvious things with the guys, in all honesty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Than they are in here. It's just a different approach to the storytelling. I did not mean it as a dig at all. I just mean, if you watch enough, you can tell that this is not necessarily an American production. Just the way the dialogue and the characters are handled, and that doesn't make it any less interesting. It's just a different style. It's got a different feel to it. Infobomb is with us. He drops a few nuggets as always. He said Burgess Meredith was also in the Rosemary's Baby wannabe, The Sentinel. Yeah. And then he said, please, Amicus, don't hurt him. Hammer time. Oh, wow. He was hitting them all. And then he mentioned Palance did play Dracula in a BBC production of the Bram Stoker tale. I wasn't aware of that. I'd have to check that out. And he mentioned there was an episode of Fantasy Island where David Heitzen, in one storyline of one of the episodes, played a man who was quite old but had made a pact with a Greek god Pan to have eternal youth. Funny you mentioned that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to get to something similar that shows up here in Torture Garden with a famous person. Cushing was in a Brit anthology called Asylum. And he said Hammer also had a Twilight Zone-esque anthology series called Journey into Mystery, which I will have to look up now, because if it's anything like Torture Garden, yeah. I love the performances by all. It's got a mixture of British and American actors in it. The two female actors are from America. They noticed that because the one guy is like, oh, hey, you're from America, aren't you? Hollywood. Oh, an actress. Oh, hey, he's kind of being the suave guy when they first take the tour.
And I was Beverly Adams played Carla.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was familiar with her before watching this movie, but she is a knockout. That cute little pixie cut, and just but also, I mean, I like that she is our heroine, but she's also got her own agenda. Like, she screws her roommate out of this opportunity for this date, like deliberately, like taking an iron to the one fancy dress. She said, I had to work lunches for a month to buy this dress. And Carla's just like, yeah, sorry, I'll let you know how the date went.
And Carla plays the Hollywood angle because she knew this producer guy with 2 tickets to a very suave dinner wasn't going to show up alone. So, oh, hey, I'm not doing anything.
Right. And I like the Bruce Benton character when he's basically saying, it's flattering that you grew up watching my movies. It's a great way of telling me I'm old without saying I'm old.
Yeah.
And then there's just the looks between him and the
Mhm.
producer. You kind of wonder there's like 2 or 3 different possibilities of what those looks could mean. And then at the end, you're like, wow, I didn't think it meant that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, given producer and even in 67, the reputation of Hollywood being, hedonistic and whatnot, you figure maybe the actor and producer were going to do something that's going to put the unfortunate actress in a predicament of sorts that, of a sexual nature or something, but they don't know. It turns out, no, they're robots, made by a refugee scientist with unorthodox ways who has an accent. um, yeah. Yeah, I liked how that played out, and especially the end because she screws over her roommate to get the break. She gets the break, she gets the job. She actually falls in love with the actor, which kind of causes her to dig deeper into this whole thing. But then it ends poorly for her because she thinks that, she realized she didn't want to be a loveless robot, but she knew their secret. And well, yeah.
Which is interesting because, I mean, she still has her own brain. It's just been transplanted into this cyborg body that her own flesh has been wrapped around. I don't know how they exactly did that. It's not explained, and it doesn't frankly matter.
No, it
But
doesn't.
but is she unhappy at the end?
She
Can
the
she
way
kill herself? Can she take herself offline if this is like such a nightmare for her?
I the gist I got at the end of this short was, unlike the others who had been transplanted and who act like a regular human or whatnot, I had a feeling they did some altercation to her consciousness as well when they put it into, so she's more under their control because she was more robot like than the others
Yeah.
when she's getting the picture. And they even drop the wonderful, I love the 60s and 50s movies. They just drop the line to let you draw your own conclusion. Yep, she is truly our baby doll. And they end it like that. You're like, and she's dressed up a little bit like a doll, and she's got more of that, frozen expression. You're like, oh, they have her under control. It's like she's a robot. She'll probably not age. She's got her own fans, but yeah, she's, they kind of, John Malkovich her of sorts.
She's a fembot.
She's a fembot,
What
freaking Stepford wife. I don't know.
here's a great example of why not only this segment but this entire movie rocks.
Mhm.
The restaurant that she goes to with the initial producer guy, Michael,
Right.
they kind of pan around the restaurant. You get to see the people at the different tables and everything. They don't make a big deal about it, but in the middle of this thing is a giant snow globe with a girl in a Santa costume and someone, she got a friend who's wearing something else,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like doing the glitter, the confetti snow. You're like, what the hell is going on? But they don't do any like close-ups, or you don't follow inside. They don't make a big deal about it. You just realize that that is in the room, and also no one else seems to care. It's just like this.
Yeah,
It's just
it's
more
just a
decoration. Yeah.
it's just a Hollywood thing, It's just them. It's just that's the way they're written to. That's why I said that it's a little British. It's like them kind of poking fun at Hollywood too, though. At the same time,
Yeah, I mean, I think if this had been, I'm just speculating, but if this had been an American production, it would have been like girls in go-go dancer cages,
Mhm.
and it would have been, all these
Yeah.
weird tilted angles, and you really gotten a full view of things. But yeah,
Yeah, but it's a great segment. It's interesting. This was the second segment. The first segment before this, uh, definitely has this one kind of has a bit of a spirit of the last segment in this film, and we'll get to both. But this first one, a little bit of a pull feel to it, where we get this doctor who is visiting his sick uncle, and he needs money, and his sick uncle ends up dying. And well, he's looking for these old coins his uncle may have had, and he runs across a coffin, and he opens up the coffin, and there's a headless skeleton in there, and a cat comes out. And well, the cat ends up being Balthassa, is it? Or how do you
Balthazar.
Balthazar, excuse me.
Yeah.
Balthazar the cat. And you can imagine where it goes from there. This cat has a peculiar hunger. It has a peculiar ability. And yeah, this guy decides to do the bidding of the cat because he'll get paid in fortune. Another one. This was great. I love all of these, but this was interesting. Again, not sure how it was going to play out.
Yeah, and it's got one of those weird endings that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because the guy, like, there's this like beheading motif. You mentioned that the body in the casket was beheaded.
Right. Well, Balthazar eats heads. So
yeah, Balthazar eats heads. The guy basically pitchforks this homeless person who's on his property, and that's how he gets the gold coins, and he's overcome with grief. But then there's this lady who comes by and he attacks her, and the cop shows up. I don't know exactly what he was doing. He had these trunks, and I guess the trunks were stuffed with the corpses, and the trunks were bleeding. Where was he going? What?
I don't know where it was.
He should have just taken a cue and put them in the coffin and put them back underneath the, in the basement.
Well, he was a bit of a panic. I mean, when you've got a cat telepathically telling you things, and if you don't do what the cat tells you telepathically, it scratches the inside of your head. So it's much like a real cat.
Well, that's the other great thing is just the imagination when he's talking about, it's like the cat is scratching the inside of my head. We do get a little bit of an audio cue of you hear like, it's very subtle, but it's going on inside of his brain. But just the idea of a cat scratching inside your head and the mania that would induce, it's so good. I do love this movie wholeheartedly, but if I'm trying to figure out how I could say this. On one level, it's very, very hacky, because I don't know if you noticed who wrote this movie.
No, I didn't.
Robert Bloch wrote Psycho.
Oh, yes.
And at least 3 of these movies, these little mini movies, are basically Psycho.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You've got the corpse in the base, in the basement, and the voice compelling you to murder. The very end with the Edgar Allan Poe story, there's a body that's been hidden in the basement, and it compels you to murder. Like all these connections. Oh, the piano, which we haven't talked about, the old Steinway. With the guy who's playing the piano that his mother gave him, and his mother's portrait. I don't know what was going on with Robert Bloch, if he had actual issues he was working out in his writing, or if he found
with his mother
one thing that he's like, I could ride this gravy train out for a decade. Because Psycho, the movie, came out in 1960. The book was written in the 50s, and then this is 67. So damn.
You stick with what you know, I guess. I don't know.
I don't, but that's the thing, is if I had not. Because when I saw his name in the credits, I'm like, oh, because I love the novel Psycho. But then I'm watching him like, I see what you're doing there, Bloch. I love it, but I'm on to you.
Yeah. You're just retailoring your original script. But that's okay, because it's still fun to watch. But it's totally hacky.
It works too. Yeah.
It still works.
Yeah, it's very effective.
It still works. Hedison, more information from Infobomb. He was the original version of The Fly, where he was billed as his birth name, Al Hedison, and he was also in a Canon production, The Naked Face, starring Roger Moore, and he played Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die and License to Kill. So there, and no, the glitter was not Mariah Carey was not in. She's not thawed out yet. She doesn't thaw out until closer to end of October. Hopefully not until Thanksgiving, but sometimes radio stations thaw her out earlier. So a cat scratch fever, and there is a hack, there is a coffin. That I could see that. But yeah, it did kind of feel a bit Psycho-ish as far as the basement and the corpse and that. But again, it's another short to, well, you're listening to this and we're spoiling the shit out of it, but you watch these, even when you watch them, if you know what's going to happen, because this is like the fourth time I've watched this movie, and you still watch it, you're like trying to see if you can tell where they give hints of where it's going, and you're not, you don't know exactly how it's going to play out. It's probably not going to play out well for our principal character, just because you had Burgess Meredith running the Diablo wax museum, complete literally with mustache twirl. Like, he literally had a twirling mustache at one point with his makeup before he removes it, which is beautiful. It's like Burgess Meredith, 67. He's in the middle of his Penguin hype, and it's beautiful to see him in that character. But these shorts aren't going to play out well. That's the whole kind of theme, that it's showing your future. So yeah, we've got this guy here who he's like, it's some trickery, and so it's like, it's still hypnosis or whatnot.
Well, before we move on, talking about an unpredictable ending, he ends up in jail because the constable sees the leaking the leaking blood travel trunk. So he's in jail and he's trying to explain to everybody what happened. Nobody believes him. So the night watchman locks him up and then leaves, and the guy turns around and he sees the cat in the cell with him, Balthazar. And he starts screaming, and we follow the cop from his desk back over to the cell, and we see the body laying in the cot, and there's no head.
No
it's
head.
Just like blood
There's
dripping
no
off
head.
the bed. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, really. Well, I guess if Balthazar ate his head magically, but it's just such a Tales from the Crypt, like, creepy ending.
Well, and then the bookend to that, even still, is like, oh, okay, we'll cut away. We don't cut away because Balthazar sticks his head out. He goes, "Oh, hi, policeman," and sits up on a chair by the policeman, and the policeman's like, "Oh." And then we cut away. So, I mean, it doesn't just end with the headless corpse in the bed. We end it with the cat came back. He couldn't stay away. He came back the very next day. Sorry.
I just love that guy. I can't remember the character's name, but the main character in this segment, he's looking into his future. So but the story of his future continues on after he's been beheaded. Is like, why do I care what happens to that cop? This is for the audience.
It's for the audience. It's not for he's watching the story. So, it's one of those things where he might not care, but the fate shears are like, oh yeah, yeah, check this out. Sucker still keeps going too.
But yeah, I mean, like, the cool thing about this is, I don't know if it's I guarantee it's in the performances, possibly the direction, but these people, none of them, they have that kind of an inkling. Like, I don't really believe what I've just seen. It seemed really real, but there's no way, this is impossible. Like, it must be like some kind of a hypnosis or something. But they just keep standing there waiting for the next person to go up, and it's as if they're waiting for the next person to be the one to say, I really believe this, let's get the hell out of here. But everyone has the same reaction. Like, they're still tempted. They just got to hold on a little bit more so that someone else can have the agency and give them the courage to to turn their back on the devil.
Well, it's morbid curiosity, and also Dr. Diablo plays to it, because as much as he plays the showman when we first see him and when our characters are introduced to him, he's the showman. He's got the twirly mustache and the makeup. He actually takes that off halfway through while they're viewing to the shears, to where he's just looking like a normal schmo, and they're like, oh, this is hypnosis. Oh, you do these people ahead of time. He's like, I didn't know anybody. This is just, it's showing you your possible future. He's like, that's what the shears do. He doesn't push the point too hard, but he doesn't have to with this group, because like you said, I think it's the morbid curiosity to where they do want to peer in, because they're like, it's got to be BS. They're looking for, I think, like you said, either the validation that it is real, or the validation that this is all a bunch of hoopla, and this is all just shenanigans. This is BS. And you get 4 stories that aren't. You know, we have we'll move on to our third one in this, which is the friend of the actress. She peers into it. And Ian, why don't you tell our folks what this story one is about?
I mean, I think this is the weakest of the three, probably because it's got the most connection to Psycho, and also it's about a possessed piano.
I love it. I love possessed musical instruments, but sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like it feels like it's even though it's 20 minutes, like they all are, it feels like a 5 minute short, right?
Yeah.
Because we all kind of this is, I think, the most predictable out of the
Right.
out of the ones. But essentially, there's this musical pianist genius who plays this piano that his mother had given to him. He's got his portrait of his mother hanging that's always kind of watching him in the studio. I mean,
It's the goddess of music. It's not his mother.
Well, no, that was you. No, Utepe was the name of the piano.
Oh, right? That's right. I apologize. Yes.
The portrait was of his mom.
Yes, that's right.
And that the lady in the portrait, that actress shows up throughout the movie. She's like the connective tissue in each of the kind of the fantasies. She's a character who shows up and is kind of giving the evil eye to everybody. But I love the design of the studio with those big black floors, and it's just really cool. But anyway, this lady kind of is an admirer of this guy, and they fall in love. And there's I guess his manager or producer or somebody is kind of telling her about the story of the mother, and like a bond that'll never break or some nonsense. I was kind of checked out during this one, honestly. But anyway, she tries to convince pianist guy to come away with him or her, and he's like, I don't know if I could do that, if I'm remembering this correctly. He goes off somewhere. She's in the studio alone at night. The piano starts, this is the most effective thing, starts playing that funeral dirge.
Oh, that was great.
And then there's like no lights in the room. It's completely dark. And then the piano just starts, and we're like at the POV almost of the piano. It starts moving and advancing on her, and it traps her, and it pushes her out a window, and she falls down, dies horrifically, like eyes open, glass and blood everywhere. And you can still hear the music coming from the studio upstairs. And then it just ends with, the son playing the piano again. Not that he wanted that to happen necessarily, but hey, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Yeah, yes, it is. You're right. This one, I would say is the most predictable of them. You know where it's, you know where this is headed right away. He's the artiste. He's the super famous artiste, and she is enamored. And he talks about mother and the goddess of music a lot, and you're just like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, this is just leave. Don't just do your report on him and leave. Don't fall in love. No, you fall in love. Okay, here we go. Oh, great. Now you're confronting the agent, and you're saying, well, he's mine now. No, don't say that. You know where I mean, it's just,
didn't she put, am I remember this correctly? There was a picture that she put of herself or her and him on the piano, and it cracked.
Yeah, there are some effective things. The most effective things about this short are the stuff you don't actually see, the stuff that they do with the piano to give it some character. It's not just him talking to her, to the piano. At one point, it's actually after she gives him the photo. No, it was before that. I'm sorry. The scene before that, where she's at the piano, she put her hands down, and she was going to play, and the thing closes on her her hands. She moves right away. I love it. The best parts of this are the stuff they do with the piano, because it's just really cool to have this, because we're not talking CGI or anything. So they're using some really old school horror film tactics to give you personality and get your scares on and your creepiness for this piano. Like you said, there's a picture she gives the artist, and they play at it again. This is where I love the direction of this, because we already saw the one scene once where it closes on her fingers, and we know by this midpoint in the story where they're in love and she gives them the picture that there's something up with the piano. The piano's got to be possessed. We figure something's going on with it. there's a shot right after she gives him the picture that she puts her hands on. She starts playing the piano, and there's a shot of the hands, and you're just waiting, like you're expecting it close on her hands and then fingers and bloody something, but it doesn't. But the director still pauses on the hands that are playing, like, are we going to close it on you? No, not this time. But like you said, then when they're out of the room, suddenly the picture falls off the frame. And yeah, the favorite part, there's another part where the music is playing, but he's not in the room. He's actually just listening to the piano play. But I loved the grave. I loved when he leaves and it's just her and a piano, and the piano started playing the
Dun,
dun
dun,
dun
dun,
dun.
dun, 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 dun.
It was
Oh man.
just slow enough to you're like, wait, is that playing? Oh, it is playing. And then she goes in the room, and you're like, why are you going in the room? Why leave when a piano plays by itself, plays that song? That's a red flag. Okay, that's just a red flag that, the funeral mark. No, I'm not going in there. But she goes in there and regrets it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like, it's the weakest of the three, but it's still pretty damn good.
Oh yeah, no, it's still solid. I mean, all of these, any one of these would fit into a Alfred Hitchcock Presents Easy, or a, like you said, Tales from the Crypt. Easily, the way they're handled, they're done that, they're crafted that well and that entertaining, to where even the weakest one, you're still like, okay, that was fun, because it ends on a strong note. Oh, I could have said bloody. I could have said bloody note. There you go.
No,
no, you're not. I can't have that one. Okay.
No.
All right. And then we get to the last one, which a lot of people, you're just waiting for. Jack Palance's character goes up to look in the shears very enthusiastically. He's here. He's like, oh yeah, I'm stepping up. I'm looking at it. I can't wait.
Well, it's here that it's kind of revealed. I think this is where it's kind of revealed that he's not part of the act.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's always kind of in the background. Michael Ripper is the older gentleman who is part of that group of four. And so you think he's going to be the next one, but he's kind of like skittish, and Palance's character steps up. And then we're off to the races, and he plays a admirer of Edgar Allan Poe. He collects rare books, but he doesn't have nearly as much cool Poe stuff as Peter Cushing.
Because it's like, if there was going to be anyone who has a massive collection of Poe stuff, it would be Cushing. Yeah.
So, like, his name is, I just want to make sure I get this right. Was it Ronald Wyatt or Wild?
I think it was Wyatt.
Wyatt, yeah, Ronald Wyatt.
Wyatt, yeah.
Okay. And then Peter Cushing's character is such a great name, Lancelot Canning.
I know, right? It's like, we got Peter Cushing for another film. All right, I'm gonna make him Simon Phillips. No, it's Peter Cushing. You're not naming him Simon Phillips. No, this is Peter. No, Lancelot Canning. There you go. That's a Peter Cushing name.
I might just go have my name legally changed to Lancelot Canning, because that's the most badass Peter Cushing name ever.
It is. It's so cool.
And
it's so fitting.
Right, but they meet at their, I guess it feels like it's an auction or something, and they're talking, or maybe it's a display of rare books.
I think it's an exposition.
Exposition. An expo.
Yeah. Expo. It's an expo. Yes. It's for displaying Poe shit.
Yes. And then so they get into this kind of like a dick measuring contest. And then Canning is like, well, I've got this first edition. And then he's like, if you ever in the area, swing by. And then we cut to Jack Palance's Mr. Wyatt showing up at Lancelot Canning's door. And he's like, I didn't think you'd meant right away. Like, come on in.
Hey, I'm a older bachelor or widow, whatever. We don't know for sure. Probably bachelor with the collection he has, because collectors, anyway.
Well, it's, talk about misdirection. The way that they were going, because there's a few different sort of red herrings, or at least plot threads that are
Right.
revealed here. You're like, okay, is he somehow Edgar Allan Poe? He just never
Right.
died, because he's got such a collection of. He's got Poe's flute. He's got like articles of clothing and furniture. And then he says, if you want to see something crazy, come with me down into the basement or the dungeon.
After they get drunk.
Right.
They get drunk.
They do start drinking, and it's so great to see Peter Cushing acting hammered. Like that's my new favorite thing in the world.
Hammered.
Oh no.
All night, baby, all night.
I need to get some sleep because I am way off my guard and my game. But they go into the basement, and there's even more rare things down there, including a bunch of manuscripts. And Mr. Wyatt is like, I'm the foremost expert on Poe. I don't recognize any of this. And it turns out it's new stories. And they're talking, and Canning's getting a little uncomfortable, so he's like, maybe we should just go back upstairs. And Wyatt picks up another piece of paper, and he holds the candle up to it, because this is all candlestick lighting, baby. There's no like light switches in this place. But he's like, the watermark on here is from 1961 or 66. What's up with this? This is a fake. This is a fraud. Explain yourself. And then he's like, no, I think you better leave. And then Wyatt notices a third key. I guess the first key opened up a door upstairs, and the second one was for the basement, and then the third was very like, what is this for? Right. And he sees that third key, and there's a struggle, and Wyatt hits Mr. Canning over the head with the metal candlestick, and he's presumed dead because he's bleeding from the temple.
So it was Wyatt with the candlestick in the basement.
In the basement, in the dungeon, yes.
In the dungeon.
Before I go any further, I want to just pull over and just say that I know Jack Palance from Batman and City Slickers. I don't know that I've never seen Shane. I've never seen like the movies that really put him on the map. But just to see him in this role playing like a lit geek, like he's so nerdy, but he still looks like Jack Palance, but he's got this joy. I mean, before everything goes really dark, but when he's like seeing the books and all this other stuff, is like, this is so cool.
Well, not only that, Jack Palance is one of those many actors that has that voice. You hear his voice. There's a reason why he narrated Ripley's Believe It or Not, and there's a reason why I watched Ripley's Believe It or Not. I watched Ripley's Believe It or Not because Jack Palance narrated the thing, and when he did, it added like 2 more layers of just mystery to the Ripley's Believe It or Not. In Italia, he would just start off with that Jack Palance, and you're just like, ooh, he's talking about the origins of pizza, and you're just like, ooh, because he has that really cool kind of evil voice of sorts. But it's weird watching his part, because like you said, he is a lit Poe geek, but he's talking in a higher pitch, very enthusiastic, happy, not gonna kick your ass, just because Jack Palance voice. It's this happy geek voice. It's so weird to see, and such a joy to see him be such a happy geek. But at the same time, you're like, that voice is just throwing me off.
Well, it's also because he's got the look that we've been seeing since the beginning of the movie, of him in this like dark suit and this mustache, and very much a kind of a serious, sinister look on his face, that when you see it, you almost forget about all that. It's not disconcerting or inconsistent. It's just like, oh, I'm watching this guy now, but it's great. If you want to pull over to a couple of the comments, because I feel like I need to address this. Yes, Mr. Baum, I've never seen all of Tango and Cash.
Tango and Cash.
And I've never seen Cyborg 2. I stopped after the first one. So yeah,
That's all you really need to Cyborg is all
yeah,
you need.
I do need to watch, because I think the only time I saw Tango and Cash was when I was on
Mhm.
cable when I was like 13, like the year after it came
Well,
out.
let's cut the hell up. You can't watch it on cable. It's like yeah, whatever.
No, like
Yeah,
HBO or
but-
whatever. It was
Oh,
on,
okay, I
yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
not
Okay,
like
okay.
TV or whatever, but
Okay, no.
but yeah, I just it's one of those blind spots. Whenever someone mentions, I'm like, I need to fucking watch Tango and Cash. Then again, I'd never watched Big Trouble in Little China all the way through until like 2 years ago.
Big Trouble in Little China.
There you go. Is that unusually thin? What is that?
No, it's a VHS.
Oh, it's VHS. Okay. For a second, I thought I didn't see the thickness of the
Oh.
spine. I thought it was like a really thin DVD. I'm like,
No,
like,
it's
what
not
is
one of
that?
those thin. It's not like one of those thin dollar store cases. No, that's the VHS I got. Which, yes, I do have it on. I think on Blu-ray and DVD, but I have it on VHS too. Don't judge. Anyway, yes, and yes, Robert, we do know he did also host Ripley's Believe It or Not, which is again why I watched that show, if nothing else.
But so getting back to the movie,
Yeah.
Wyatt notices this. I can't remember how he found it, but like this chamber opens up. How did he discover this thing?
Well,
He put the key in the door, or is that
yeah,
something else?
he put the key in the door and it opened the chamber because it didn't
Okay.
actually open the door. It opened
Because he turns around and he sees this
right
thing
because
opening
he
across the
heard
room.
the thing started to open when he turns the key in the door. It actually opens up the room, the secret room, where Canning doesn't have Poe's ashes in this ornate box from his grandfather.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the other thing. Yeah,
because that's what triggered the suspicion that Wyatt had, because he had this box and he's like, Canning, it was what about this box? He's like, my grandfather was a basically grave robber. He'd sell corpses for scientific study, and he happened across the last resting place of Poe, and he put all the dust into this box. And Wyatt's like, I've never heard this Poe story before. It sounds like a bunch of poo-poo Poe. And so he's like, he opens the box, like, wait, there's no ashes in here. And that's where the conflict is with the key and everything. And when it opens up, he's like, oh, you've got something better than ashes. You got yourself straight up Edgar Allan Poe in your dungeon.
Well, and then so when this chamber opens up, it's essentially a writing desk with ink and quills and parchment and a skeleton hanging over it, and you see this body that's initially is partially obscured, so it's like, is it a skeleton in a Poe outfit? But no, it's a flesh and blood human being. And when Wyatt goes in, he talks to him, and Poe kind of like turns, and it's a great, I don't know who the actor was.
Oh, who played Poe?
Yeah, if they even credit him as
I don't know if they.
Poe.
I don't think they do, because it would probably give it too much away. But
yeah, be like a spoiler or something.
Not that IMDb is above showing spoilers, Con.
But
what?
the performance is
Hedger Wallace. Sorry,
Hedger Wallace.
Hedger Hedger. So Hedger Wallace.
It might be Hedger, yeah,
or Hedger. Yeah, he was in a number. It looks like a number of BBC shows for quite some time, mostly. And some movies as well. Passport to China. Okay, so he's been in a number of things too.
But he's wonderful as Poe. Doesn't feel like he looks exactly like him, but he looks enough. He's got the spirit of him. It's strange because we do see a portrait of Edgar Allan Poe, I think, upstairs.
Yes,
to me, he looked more like John Wilkes Booth.
He did look a little more like Booth.
But anyway, so Poe is talking to Wyatt, and Wyatt's like, you've unlocked the mystery, the mysteries of the eternity and everything. And Poe's like, yeah, it's fucking great. I'm gonna deal with the devil. So the only way I'm immortal, but if I give this up, then I'm condemned to hell. And the only way that I can escape that is if someone takes my place in hell, or destroyed by fire or
Fire,
something like
right?
that,
Yeah.
right? And so Wyatt says, well, I'll help you out, but I want to know all your secrets. And then he lights everything on fire. It's a bit of a strange, I almost got the feeling that he sets everything on fire and then he starts to leave, but then he's like, you can never leave. And then he's surrounded by flames, but he doesn't seem too upset about it.
No, and I think, he doesn't seem too upset about it. And I think it's because if you're a Poe fan, like fanatic, like we're talking, toxic Star Wars fandom. Oh my God, they made the color of this one arrow on the sleeve of the one side character the wrong color type of fan. So if you're a Poe fan, to get taken out by having the wool pulled over your eyes, yeah, I did that. I totally did that. Having the wool pulled over your eyes and dying like that, at one point, yeah, I'm gonna die. On the other hand, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I just got killed by Poe, because Edgar Allan Poe said, yeah, you can either take my place at this desk or, cleanse the things by fire. He's like, he cleanses by the fire, and Poe's like, yeah, no, you're still screwed. Sorry, Chief. No, I lied. He doesn't say I lied, but he basically said, oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to tell you, he who cleanses me with fire is going to be in hell too. So
I maybe it's just because I watched it the one time. I didn't quite like the nuances of the deal. I didn't quite pick up on it, especially because at the end of this movie, when we get back out into the carnival, into Dr. Diablo's torture garden, Mr. Wyatt ultimately decides, hey, that, I do want to strike up a deal with the devil. Everything I've just seen is crazy and dark, but I still want a part of it, which is really messed up.
It is. But at the same time, it's just an interesting story. This is the one that really cemented it for me. And especially the way it ended, because you're just like, wait, what? And then you're like, Poe's like, yeah, you're screwed. Ha ha. Because I'm Edgar Allan Poe. I am the original goth, and I just goth you with my bet. No,
no. But I will say, one of the things I did, even though I'm a bit puzzled by the ambiguity of it, I did love just the visual of the flames all around Jack Palance, and Jack Palance kind of digging it. It wasn't the cliched of like, oh, I've just been screwed, now I'm gonna scream and be all like literally hot and bothered by it. He actually seemed like really into it, just made it more disturbing.
He's fascinated by it. In fact, yeah, he's just like, this is wild. He's like, oh my God, Poe just lit the fire and I'm around all this Poe stuff and it's burning down. And this is just like, he just seems very enamored with the whole situation. Which is funny, because when they do that and watching it this time around, it almost made me wonder whether he was smiling because, he's being taken out and kind of going out this way, being killed by Poe, or if they're alluding to the fact that he is aware that this is a vision of the future and he's smiling because he's getting a kick out of what he just saw. Because when we cut to him staring at the shears, and the shears, whenever they end the vision, it cuts the line. He's rather happy. He's actually amused. He's not disturbed. He's amused.
Yeah.
That's
a possibility. I mean, he could have been such a Poe super fan that just the idea that he could get to meet his idol, maybe he figures, well, I know what's going to happen, so if I know what's going to happen, I'm just going to super be ready to enjoy it while it's going on.
Which, talking to you now, it's really clicking, because if that is his future and he feels that Diablo is the devil, Burgess Meredith is the devil, he decides to stick around, because after this event, they stage a stabbing of Diablo by the one guy who doesn't do the vision. He ends up grabbing the shears and stabbing Diablo, and people run out. They're scared. And then you find out it's all smoke and mirrors. But Mr. Wyatt was sitting in the background this whole time just watching this. He knows who Diablo really is, and they talk about possibly striking a deal after he saw the vision. Now, if the vision's in the future and he's smiling, it makes me wonder what deal he may have struck with the devil. If we get into time thing here, let's just...
I was just thinking about this. Yeah, because it's... My God. So if during the vision that he's having with the shears, it's that time loop thing where in that fantasy vision, he has already made the deal with the devil. So he gets to meet his hero, and he understands what's going to happen. That's right. That's why he's kind of cool with it, because he's like, well, this is exactly what I signed up for.
He's cool with it because what happened was what he expected. And It explains why he's so overly enthusiastic, and it comes around, and maybe the writers intended that or not, but that's the way you could actually take this. Because if you think about that being his future and why he'd be happy that he's burning down, and then you cut back to him saying, hey, you know, hey, we got to talk. And he's like, okay, we'll talk.
It's Doc wearing the bulletproof vest at the end of Back to the Future.
It's Doc wearing the bulletproof vest at the end. He made some kind of deal, which it very well could have been a deal. Hey, I'll get you Poe's soul that's been trapped for so long that you're owed, if I get to meet him.
Holy shit. That?
Yes. And that's why he's happy, because he's not going to actually die in the fire, because he got to deliver Poe to the devil, which I'm taking it to a whole nother level. That's probably
I would read a novel or watch a movie that is just about that segment of Torture Garden combined with our theory that we're coming up with here.
Yes, I'd be down for that. And it could play out like that, because that's the way it kind of ends. And then for 67, they try to do their best special transformation effect, which is the ye old in-camera dissolve. Where, Diablo looking normal, everybody leaves, including Wyatt, and then they do a little flip. He's like, oh, well, sometimes people get away and they can handle the truth. And then they do this little back of his head that's dissolving. He turns around and he's got the mustache and the horns, and like, but do you? And then they go to credit.
It's a nice closing shot, but what I was hoping that they were doing, and I was... that dissolve, that little transition, I'm not going to say it almost ruined it for me, but I was like, oh no. Because in my mind, the way that they staged him turning his back to the camera and walking, he walks quite a significant way as he's monologuing. Yes. I just imagined that, because you don't see all of his head, it's partially obscured in shadow, right? I was imagining some makeup person, like, just off camera, like reaching their hand up and like sticking the mustache on and sticking the horns on or something, so that when he turned around, it would be that kind of an effect. And I'm kind of disappointed it wasn't, because I'm convinced they could have pulled it off without that awful watery color shifting.
Yeah, that's the other thing. But by that point, I didn't care. I was fine. I figure we'll toss some trivia, because it's a 1967 film, and I always love a little bit of the stories. Apparently, we've got this movie was shown in 67, and we know the 60s. I kind of miss these wild promos. Now only critics or those who are in the know get the nifty little tchotchke boxes. But in 1967, one of the promos was a pack of Torture Garden seeds given to the patrons as they entered the theater. The seeds were actually grass seeds, but they gave them little packets of seeds that said Torture Garden on them. I would love to have one of those packets. I really would. They probably don't exist anymore, but I would love to get one of those. And then apparently Columbia Pictures financed the movie and insisted that 2 American actors be cast. Therefore, the initial casting of Peter Cushing and Sir Christopher Lee was changed to that of Jack Palance and Burgess Meredith. So they still got Cushing, but they were going to put Christopher Lee in there, probably in the role of Meredith, but they ended up getting Palance and Meredith because this is a Columbia picture produced. They did fork over the money for it.
I'm glad they ended up where they did.
Yeah. This movie was released in the US as top half of a double feature with Trog from 1970, which was Joan Crawford's final movie. Both of them were directed by Freddie Francis. And Barbara Ewing in here, who played Dorothy Endicott, received an introducing credit. So introducing Barbara Ewing.
All right.
So yeah, it's interesting. And Burgess Meredith does come back later in Twilight Zone Printer's Devil from 1963. Actually, this was before. I'm sorry. In 1963, Burgess Meredith played the devil in 1960 on Printer's Devil. So this was the second time that he played the devil. Which, if you're going to get someone to play a devil in your film, yeah.
You know, he is so great in this, and I feel like this is almost a good like Hammer sampler. You know, Christopher Lee in it, but you know, you've got some other heavy hitters in here. But what I love about the Hammer performances is they're so earnest, and even when they're playing someone big like the devil, it never gets hammy. It's never like you can't sit there and laugh at like, oh, this is so cheesy. It's just committed, and you can tell that they're having fun. They're having fun, but it's not like the idea of like, oh, it's just a blast on set. We're amusing each other. No, you feel like he's having fun creating this larger than life character who's meant to scare the hell out of the other characters in the scene.
It's the appeal of the stuff during this time with these older veteran actors who are still getting work. I mean, as much as everybody pokes fun at or poke fun, but as we have fun with the 60s Batman and you know, Adam West in that, why those shows work and why you are just so entertained is, of course, the villains, but the committedness of these veteran actors to these crazy characters give them a different level than what they might if someone just kind of hammed it. Oh, I'm playing, you know, Vincent Price. Oh, I'm playing a guy named Professor Egghead or whatever. Doesn't matter. Vincent puts his all in. Burgess Meredith plays a guy who's a penguin who walks around and goes rah, but yet he does it with such commitment and such seriousness, as he takes it as serious, even though he's having fun, as far as the effort he puts into it. He puts as much effort into the goofy character as he does a Shakespearean character. And that's what I think makes the appeal for a lot of these films. And like even here, like you said, he easily could have just phoned it in with this, but he is committed enough to play it with at least a little nuance in that of evil in that to make him creepy, but he's not over the top, like just laugh at him creepy. You're like, okay, the makeup at first, but when he starts doing the second half of his show, you're like, okay, I'm a little unnerved now. If I was in this group, I'd say, you know what, keep the 5 pounds, Blady. You know, it's yeah, there's some nuance there. So, and Barbara Ewing, in that segment, Mr. Steinway, she was the one that was actually jumping out the window because her stunt double was sick that day. She landed on a mattress, but she actually got pushed through that window. That is the actress. So very interesting stuff from IMDb. And I always love to read some of those trivia tidbits from especially kind of obscure older films, because that's just fascinating. And this film's fascinating. And we're gonna wrap it up tonight. Torture Garden. Ian, I think I know what your answer is, but go ahead, recommend it.
Oh, highest possible recommendation. This movie is awesome. It's got it all. I did take a moment here just to look up and on eBay, and I can't find any of those Torture Garden promo seeds.
No. So because people probably tossed them or kept them and they're not letting them go, or they grew their own Torture Garden with them, which don't Google Torture Garden.
At least not at work.
If you Google Torture Garden, make sure you put 1967 after it, okay? Because if you just put Torture Garden, you might just get results for BDSM club. So careful with that, unless you're into that. Which,
I was going to say, what if you're looking for it?
If you are looking for that, great. And if you're looking for that and happen to run across this movie, watch this movie before or after you go to the actual torture garden, because I agree, it's a fun film. I watched this a number of times. There's a reason why I own it. It pulled me in because of the names, and it kept me there because of the stories, and it's just fascinating. And I think we forget that we get some of these big named actors in that, especially in the 50s and 60s, those classic actors, and we forget not every film they were in were the big blockbuster classics. They were a lot of side stuff as well, you know.
Well, that's the thing is, going through all these Hammer movies, because
Yeah,
last year we did the Dracula and the Frankenstein, the heavy
sure.
hitters,
Mhm,
and now Son of Hammerland, we're going through all the ones that are kind of the off-brand
mhm,
ones, um, and those are just as much of an enjoyment as
mhm.
the ones that everybody knows. And Torture Garden, I think this is one where I'm just scratching my head, like, why isn't this like on everybody's lips? So good.
I don't know either, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I say you check it out. It's on streaming. There's ways you can get it. There's DVDs still out. I think and if you're fortunate enough, Arrow did a limited Blu-ray release of this with a whole bunch of, Arrow extra stuff, but I think it's way out of print and expensive now, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But I would love to get my hands on that as well, because the DVD is sweet. It's got subtitles as well as some trailers from 2005 for direct-to-video stuff on here. So I've got
Oh,
a
joy.
trailer. I've got a trailer for Frankenfish on here. I know you're envious. You're envious. Look at the envy on your face. Envy.
I'm
So
agreeing, all right, but
I
not
hear.
with envy.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our watchers, which we had tonight, especially Infobomb. Always glad to hear from you, sir. Thank you to all our listeners out there. Keep us going. You keep us moving. Thank you for listening. And now, as always, licensed to shill for my crew. Ian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which you can find at Kicking the Seat on YouTube. And we do reviews and interviews and roundtables and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, check it out. Wednesday, tomorrow, when we're recording this, but probably in the past when you listen to this, I'm doing a live stream roundtable review, quote unquote roundtable, because I have no idea who's going to show up for this, if anyone. We're going to be talking about the new Disney Plus Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
Is that a riff on Ricola?
No, that's not. Maybe. I don't know.
I'm all there for it, and I enjoyed that more than I enjoyed watching Pinocchio. So, spoiler on my thoughts of the movie. But no, so
He
yeah, we'll be doing
says
that.
that, but his nose just grew and hit the camera. So we'll have to listen to see if he's telling the truth or not.
Oh, wasn't my nose. Sorry.
Oh, is that what that was? All
Yeah.
right. Well, that's why. Lie to me, Pinocchio. Lie to me. Anyway.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I think on that note, we're just gonna say good night, everyone.
Good night.